everyone, I'm Rebecca and welcome back to my panic sewing room. Okay, it's just panic sewing for today, and actually it's probably not even sewing. We're gonna be panic gluing today. It's what you came here for, right? Because I am attempting to make a Victorian bonnet in like a couple of hours. Tomorrow morning, I leave for the Victorian Festival in Port Townsend, which if you have been around my channel at all in the last couple of months, you've probably heard me talk about before, or even, before the last couple of months. It is an event that generally happens every year in Port Townsend that is all about like Victoriana, and there's like lectures and there's a dance and there's all sorts of stuff that goes on and everyone dresses up and it's lovely. So obviously it's been canceled for the last couple of years, but we're back this year, and that is what I was making my Gilded Age gown for if you watched that video. And it is also what I made the velvet ball gown bodice for, which is behind me there because this is running kind of concurrently, but you will have seen that video last week. It's actually also what I made the blue Tissot pleated dress and also the day version of this back in 2020. I made those for the Victorian Festival too, and I'm wearing them this year because the 2021 got canceled. Anyway, what I need to do still, there's a lot of things, but the main thing that I need to do is making a bonnet for that natural form gown that I just finished. And I may or may not show you some of the other stuff too, which is basically adding like some sort of a ruffle or filler type thing in the neckline of that dress. I don't think I'm gonna go for a full dicky like I had mentioned before, because actually there were some lower necklines for day wear during that time, but usually they had like some sort of a filler ruffle. So that's one thing I need to do. And then I still need to add a balayage, in other words, a dust ruffle, to the inside underside of the train of the skirt. So those need to get done as well. But again, the bonnet is the main thing because I have not even started that. So we are working completely from scratch, and we are going to be using Prior Attire's book for this project. That is this book right here. It's the Victorian Dressmaker's Companion. It's her volume 3, and it's all filled with hats, caps, and bonnets. And there happens to be a pattern in here for an 1880s bonnet. So this is what we are going to be using. By the way, I apologize for any weird lighting that is going on right here because it is late afternoon here. It's 4:40 because I worked earlier today, and at this time of day the light comes streaming in my window, and even if I close the blinds, we get these weird light flashes everywhere. So that's why you're seeing these distracting light flashes. In any case, this is the pattern I'm using. I'm going to be making this out of buckram. So first I need to transfer like these little grid pattern shapes to my buckram, and I need to cut 2 pieces of buckram for every one of these because my buckram is not stiff enough. Generally with millinery you double layer your buckram, so that's what I need to do with this. But while I go and I cut out the buckram for this project, I am actually going to transfer you over to sponsor Rebecca for a little word about today's sponsor. Thank you, Sewing Rebecca. Sponsor Rebecca here, and today's video is kindly sponsored by Skillshare. If you've been around my channel, you have probably heard me talk about Skillshare before, but if you haven't yet heard of Skillshare, it is an online learning community for creative and curious people. On Skillshare, you can find thousands of inspiring classes on topics including photography, art, productivity, technology, and even sewing. Now, I didn't realize until recently that Skillshare even has classes on baking and cooking. And since I'm usually a make a cake from a box kind of girl, I decided to try Baking for Beginners, Simple Recipes for Desserts from Scratch, taught by Shivesh Bhatia. His class includes a wonderful resources section where you can find all of the recipes and instructions so you can download and print them for use in the kitchen. And in his video, he shows how all of his desserts go together, which are all based on one basic cake recipe. I decided to try the basic vanilla cake recipe, though I made it in cupcake form, and I wound up having to substitute strawberry Greek yogurt for the nondescript yogurt in the recipe, since that was what I had on hand. So let's see how it tastes. You know what? I was a little worried, but it actually tastes really good, and you can faintly taste the strawberry as well. So not bad at all for a 25-minute class. In fact, that's one of the things that I really like about Skillshare. A lot of the classes are nice and short, and it's really easy to pause, rewind, or rewatch classes as often as you like. Plus, you can save classes you want to take in the future to your profile so that you can come back and watch those classes later. And the great news is that the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link down in the description box below or use my code LadyRebeccaFashions, all one word, will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare so that you can explore your limitless creativity. And now, back to sewing, Rebecca. So the first thing that I've done, other than taking like an hour to clear off almost all of my entire table, which is probably a waste, but I needed to be able to put my pattern paper roll on the table, because first thing that I've done is create a pattern on gridded paper from this pattern right here. And I'm glad that I did, because this isn't going to work. Like, I haven't even tried to put this together or anything, but already just from looking at it, I can tell like this brim is just way too low from what I need, because this is the bonnet that I'm trying to copy. Obviously I can't see much of it, but what I can see is that it has this like largish halo like brim right here, which this is not. So I'm kind of gonna like hold this up to my head to see if this is at least the right scale. I'm hoping it is, because if so, then that means all I'd have to do is like increase that size right here. I cut everything, by the way, that was on the fold in this book. I cut it out flat. So this piece and this piece, this one was already out flat for some reason, I guess just to save space in the book. I don't know. But the thing is that like, if you're working with buckram, you can't just like fold over the buckram and use a half size pattern. You would have to like draw out half the pattern and then like flip the pattern. So it's just easier to do it out on the pattern first. So that's what's going on here. But yeah, I'm going to try this over my head, see if this head shape is right, and then figure out how much I need to increase it by, or if I need to scrap the whole thing. So I'm a little bit worried that it might be too wide. Like I can feel room. You can kind of see like if this is snug against my head, there's this. Obviously my hair is not like done up like it will be tomorrow, and so I'm hoping that that won't really affect things, because it'd be much easier for me to start with the same curve, because that is what this goes with. So assuming that these all work together, like this curve works with this. Changing the outer brim, it's not a big deal at all, because that doesn't actually touch anything else. So I think I'm gonna stick with the curve, the inner curve as is, and then just increase this height right here, probably by 1/2 inch, 3/4 of an inch, something like that. It's good on the sides, it's just the top that needs to be a bit wider. It comes down so pointy too. I hope that this is okay. Like this is cut without any seam allowance, which I haven't read the instructions on this pattern. I probably should have read the instructions on the pattern, because like on the pattern, it shows black lines outlining this, and then there's like red lines for seam allowance. My brain went to, oh, the seam allowance is probably just for like the silk parts and the fabric parts. I think the male's here. I completely forgot what I was saying before Lion started barking. And I went to go see what was going on, and it was male, as I thought. But yeah, I'm a little bit worried about with the seam allowance. I maybe should have cut this with the seam allowance, but I guess I'll just have to remember like, oh, that's where the seam allowance goes. And now I'm gonna go read the directions, and see how this goes together. So yes, I do need to use the seam allowances on the back of the crown and on the brim. Those need to be cut with seam allowances. So I'm just gonna write that on my pattern, and then like when I'm drawing it out on the buckram, I'm going to cut it out with the seam allowances like I should. So naturally somehow like another hour plus has passed. It's 6:45 now. I don't know how that happened, but the buckram is all cut out. That's all though. However, what you don't see is that this is actually 2 layers each of buckram. This buckram is being really nice to me today, and I don't know why, because I swear it wasn't nice to me last time, but sometimes if buckram is nice to you, you can actually fuse the 2 layers together with your iron. I do recommend probably stitching it together as well, but yeah, usually it doesn't even stay together at all. I have to somehow like clip it or whatever before I stitch it, and it is fusing super nicely. I also went ahead and just kind of put a curve into this. So because this part is the crown, by the way, because this is curved, this is the part that's like that. when you're fusing it, you want to kind of build that curve into it. So I went and I used my ham and just kind of curved it around the ham. And obviously it's not like the exact right curve, but what this does is basically kind of shrink the inner circle and stretch the outer circle so that you don't get weird bubbles all over when you are later bending it. So I highly recommend doing that. I did it to a slightly lesser degree on this as well because this also has just a very slight curve to it. So yeah, I have the 2 layers cut on all of this. I've marked where I need to notch on this piece, but I haven't actually notched it yet. And I didn't mark on this piece because I did wind up cutting out a new paper pattern for this with the seam allowance and with the taller brim included. So now I have to cut out all of the other like the fabric portions of these. I have some flannel. I always forget that I need flannel. So I have some flannel left from like something. It's brown, but it doesn't appear to show through the silk. Like the silk doesn't seem to be any different color with brown behind it versus not with brown behind it. This is used for mulling. So basically this will make the silk look really smooth. I don't think, I mean, I've read through the pattern instructions now a couple times, and Isabella doesn't seem to talk about mulling at all in this, but her exterior fabric is a wool satin, so I've never worked with that. Maybe that's thick enough where you don't really need mulling. With silk taffeta, you need mulling because otherwise you're gonna see like every little bump from inside here. You just need something in between. So you're supposed to use like a flannel or a felt, something smooth but like a little bit thickish, and basically cut all of the same pieces, everything to cover your exterior at least. Some people mold the interior too, I guess. I wasn't planning on it, but you want to cut all of your pieces in this as well, and then also in the silk. Most likely I am going to be gluing together pretty much every little part of this because it's 6:45 and I don't have time, and I'm wearing this tomorrow and I still have to pack and sew on a balayage and a neck ruffle and yeah, some closures. I did a few before I started this. Part of what I was procrastinating earlier was I did actually sew on a few more closures, and I also fixed a button. I made some buttons for the day bodice of that, and so I did that earlier, which was part of why it's now 6:45. But I need to go walk Lion and make some dinner, and then I'm gonna come back to this bonnet in probably another like hour from now and work till really late and get everything finished. So I wound up taking quite a bit longer of a break before than I should have because I was so overwhelmed with how much I have to do that, you know, it was just that feeling of like, oh my God, I can't. But it is now 8:30 and I have everything cut out. I think like everything, but I'm not sure. I mean, obviously there's probably going to be embellishments that I don't have, but I have all of the mulling, the flannel layer cut out. I have all the silk cut out, and like you saw before, I have all the buckram cut out. So now we get to actually start assembling. So it would appear that the only part that we have to wire in this is the exterior of the brim. I'm actually kind of more used to wiring more, but looking at her instructions, she says wire in the usual way, which I'm like, thanks, really? So I went back to the beginning of the book, and the first instance of wiring is just wiring the brim. So that's what we're going to go with. I have millinery wire. It looks like this, so it is very thin, very malleable, etc. And basically this just gets applied with a zigzag stitch to the exterior of this brim, and then she has you cover it over with bias tape. So that's what I'm going to do first. I've never tried this step with the bias binding right over the wire, but it seems like it's going to make for a really nice smooth finish right here. I mean, it will have silk bias binding put over it later as well, but this, or actually in my case, I think poly, but this just, yeah, it feels really nice. So I think that's a great little step. Now I have to cut all of the crenellations right here. So I did my stitch line 1/2 inch from the edge, and so that I can just cut to there, cut all my little notches. I also have to notch this piece right here. So I have to notch all the way to that 1/2 inch stitch edge, and then I can glue these three pieces together. So these two pieces went together pretty fine. I did find that there was just a little bit more to the end right here on the brim than there was on the crown, but also this was the piece where like I didn't exactly measure the seam allowance, so that's on me. But then I just tried to go put this one in. I've notched it all like that, you can see, and I just like kind of held it up to see if it would fit in there, which I'm not gonna be able to like do with, you know, the only two hands. But basically, can you see that? It's like way longer. So probably what I'm just gonna do is like cut the excess off over here. But yeah, I don't know if this is a problem with like the way that I drafted it out of the book or with the original pattern, but something is off. So I'll make it work. It's not a big deal. Luckily, this is a bonnet, not a hat, so that means that it's open in the back. A hat, it would go all the way around, and fitting this would be way, way more imperative. But yeah, not a big deal when it's a bonnet. Everything is now all attached together. One thing that I'm used to doing with hats is that I usually wire the top of the crown as well, and I feel like I could have used that on this. It's too late now, but basically, I don't know how well you're gonna see this, but like, can you see that it's kind of crooked? Can you? Yeah, I think you can see it there. That like this side right here, it just feels like it needs to go like this. And if I had wire here, or even wire here, which I also a lot of times do, then I would be able to kind of bend that back. So I'm hoping that this is something that I can kind of reshape maybe with steam or something, but like, yeah, it is definitely, oh wow, it's really a lot from that angle. And it's not that it's like uneven, it is literally just that it is warped. So not exactly sure how to fix that, but the cool thing now is that we get to start decorating. Well, actually we mull and then we decorate. So the mulling, I think I'm just gonna glue on. Like, not a big deal. It'll be like this, and then I'll notch all of the sides like I just did, and then same with the mulling on this part, and then I'll put this part over. I don't remember if well, she doesn't have the mulling at all in her instructions, but like, that's what I'm gonna do. I've gotta say, there's something quite cute about like binding and little crenellations. I don't know, it's just kind of cute. So I just glued the brim mulling on, and I was about to start on this when it dawned on me that there's a very important instruction missing from this. And maybe it's like earlier in the book and she just assumes you've read the entire book, but this piece in the silk has to get cut with seam allowances. And I didn't, so I guess I'm recutting those pieces. So as far as applying the silk goes, you can't really put glue down in areas where it's going to show. So I have glued down the crenellations on the top because that's going to get covered by the crown piece. And up here I can glue down right on the edge because it's going to be covered by the binding. I'm not yet sure. And yeah, for this section right here too, I can glue the crenellations down because that will be covered also by the crown. For the crown, it's definitely more challenging because frankly, if I glue it, most likely that glue will show. But it is 10 o'clock. I leave tomorrow in 12 hours was the idea. Haven't packed yet. Still to do the values, still to do the neckline ruffle, still to do some of the closures on that. So the idea of hand sewing, even just this little bit, not very tempting. This part can totally get covered by trim. So maybe hand sewing this tiny bit will be worth it. I still need to trim this bonnet too. Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm gonna get back to work. So I kind of forgot about the fact that obviously the binding has to be sewn down too. In a hat with a larger brim, you can get away with like at least one side of the binding, usually just one side of the binding, sewing it by machine, but I just can't get in there with the machine, so that means both sides of the binding unfortunately have to be sewn down by hand. I haven't yet recut the sides of the crown, so I have to do that now because I also can't finish binding. And of course I forgot when I was cutting my binding, I measured it to here, except that this also gets binding. So, oh my God, and it just dawned on me. This binding's supposed to be the pink, not the blue. Well, I'm glad I haven't sewn it yet. Ugh! Now to cut pink binding. Actually, never mind. Blue binding looks good. I think that's what she has. She has blue binding right up there, and then she's got like pink little flowers and pink bow up there or something like that. So blue binding's good. I just have to cut more for the back underside. How the heck am I gonna finish this? I still need to pack. So I'm starting to glue in my lining. So I've already glued down the bottom. I notched, or I guess the top of the crown, I notched around the side like before, and then I just did a little bit of glue here and then around the edge. And now I have the inner part of the crown lining. Now for the crown lining, this part right here, which is like the bottom right in here, you wind up having to notch that as well because it's going to give this like outward curve. This part doesn't seem to be a problem, I guess because the shape of the curve, but yeah, basically this now is going to get put in here. I can't do this one-handed. It's going to get put in here and it's going to get glued down around, and then that'll really be it for the lining. I'm not going to care about like hand sewing anything for lining because it's lining. And then I realized, so the outer part, I actually cut it a little bit long, and I think, okay, so I cut it a little bit long. I'm having a realization right now. And I was going to fold it over, but I don't think I have enough to fold it twice. Do I care? I probably care. I don't know. I don't want to bind it. I cut binding for this bit because then I was thinking that was going to work for this. And, you guys. It's like 10:45 or maybe 11. I don't even know. I've got to get this done. I managed to figure out how to not do binding on the sides, and actually I think it's super pretty that way. And basically it's just that I like tucked in the edges and then glued it, though it looks like I need a little bit more glue on that edge there. But now it's ready for hand sewing. So all of that, everywhere where it's clipped has to be hand sewn, plus where it's pinned there at the top. Let's hope it doesn't take me too long because it's already 11:15. Well, it is now 12:45, but the base of the bonnet is done. You can see all my hand stitches all over there, and same with like on the back right here and up in the front right there. The hand stitching just looks really neat, like if you compare it to the gluing, like right there. But speaking of gluing, now it's time to decorate this. So I did already, like before I started the hand sewing, I kind of went through my trims and looked at what might work and like went through flowers and stuff. And I think I do want to make one large bow out of the same fabric that I made the bow for the dress, so like that pink poly fabric. So that bow will kind of sit up top on the hat here and like peek over the brim. And then it seemed like there was kind of something cloudy going on, so I think that might be like feathers. So I'm thinking like maybe feathers here plus like bow there, and then there's like sort of flowers cascading down. And so I don't have a lot of good flowers because they're pink flowers in the fashion plate, and I don't have a lot of like ones that could cascade. So we'll see how that might go. I might have to forgo those. I don't know. I would love to get them in there, but it might not work. And then up front here, there's going to be lace, which I've got this like pink fake beading lace. And so that's going to go around right in there, and then there's going to be a few little flowers on that lace, and that's all going to be glued in place. The only thing that I might sew the feathers in place. I mean, the thing about these feathers, I've already curved these, which all you do to curve a feather is you kind of gently push your fingernail into the spine of the feather, and so I already curled them, and because of that they really don't stick out above the top of the bonnet. That's normally why I will make feathers like removable, is because it's hard to travel with a bonnet, like put in a hat box, etc., if you've got feathers sticking up all over. But these are kind of the shape of the hat, so I kind of feel like gluing might work. We'll see. I may sew the feathers on and then everything else is gonna get glued on, just because also glue around feathers, that gets messy very fast. So yeah, I'll probably sew the feathers on. I think I'm also going to cut the ends off the feathers. They're just like a little bit long right here. So in fact, let's just use my metal cutter so I don't screw up my scissors and just like crunch those off. Okay, that's cool. I already sewed them together. It's just a little bit of white thread, and I'll probably put a dab of glue on just so they stay together. But again, probably not glue them to the hat itself. And I'll want to find something to kind of cover right at the base of this. I'm not sure what yet. So I'm gonna go throw a bunch of decorations on this, and let's see how quickly I can get this all set, and I'll show you what it looks like when it's done. The front part is finished and it is looking so cute already. I'm very pleased that I had this lace in my stash from like forever and ever ago, because I really needed the wide double-sided lace. So that was perfect, and then that just looks adorable. Love it. Okay, now to decorate the back. Well, it's 2 o'clock in the morning, which normally wouldn't be a big deal for me because I often am up until like 4, but I was hoping to leave tomorrow at 10. That's not happening because I'm not packed and I still don't have a ballouse on my skirt, and I really want that for tomorrow. So the bonnet, I think though, is as done as it's going to be. I kept trying to figure out ways to make like the flower waterfall thing happen, and it just wasn't gonna happen. So this is the back first, so you can see that. And basically I just put arches of feathers on both sides. This side looked really plain at first when I only had feathers on the one side, so I put more on there, and then there's a bow up at the top, which the bow kind of winds up looking like cat ears. I don't know if I hate that or if I love that idea, but basically this is then what happens. And we tie the big lace under and it looks all frilly, and of course I have my hair done and everything. So I think I'll probably stick flowers in my hair. I made up this like pretty little nosegay, and I was really trying to make it work for like coming down the side type thing, but it just looks awkward. So that's not gonna happen, but I think I will stick some of these in my hair, so I will bring this with me. But that is it for the bonnet. So as far as the ballouse goes, for those of you who care about that, let me show you what I'm doing. So I got this curtain valance at the thrift store the other day, and it's got this lovely ruffle at the bottom, and most of this, there's actually 2 of them. They're very long, and a lot of this I want to turn into a skirt, like a huge ruffly floaty fun skirt for daily wear. But I'm going to sacrifice a little bit of it for the ballouse. So I am going to, I think, put the skirt on the dress form and see how much of it needs a ballouse on it. And then I'm just going to cut off like that length. It's probably going to be like this, to be honest. And then I'm just going to like cut the top and serge the edge and do giant whip stitches into the underside facing area of the train of the skirt. And this is just going to make a nice little dust ruffle for walking along the streets of Port Townsend. So let's see how quickly I can get that done, because I'm hoping it's in the next half hour. Well, it is 2:37, but the ballouse is on. So that's what it looks like. It's this lovely ruffle that happens to match the dress too. Like it's the same pink, I think, as the bows, which is kind of funny. But it's all stitched on, and that should give my skirt some extra protection. So awesome. I think I'm gonna have to sacrifice the neckline ruffle though, because of the time. I might bring it with me, but this is the outfit that I'm wearing tomorrow. So I don't really see it happening. I don't know. Maybe I'll like pin it on with safety pins. That's actually not the worst idea. We'll see. Or maybe I'll like whip stitch it really quickly. But like I still haven't packed, and it's 2:40 in the morning, and I can't really leave later than like noon, or I will actually like miss stuff once I get there. So yeah, I am going to go ahead and probably pack some things. Lots of these I'm gonna do in like garment bags, so a lot of that should be good. And I did already earlier today go around and like gather up a few things, and I also made a packing list, so like at least that's there. But I made the hat, I did the ballouse. It's been a long day of sewing following a long day of work, but it's done and I'm ready for the Victorian Festival. So I will have an entire other video on the Victorian Festival where you will get to see all of my dresses and all of everything, like the goings on and all of that in action. So do make sure that you check back for that. I think that will be, heck, it might have even already come out. I don't know the order of these videos right now. It may very well have come out before this video, in which case I will link it down below. Editing Rebecca here. Now, I don't know if you've already noticed this, but if you watched my Port Townsend weekend Victorian Festival vlog, that actually had the final reveal of this bonnet in that video. So if you head over there, which I will link down below, you can see the bonnet in action. I wore it all day on Friday and it performed quite wonderfully. I cannot wait to wear this whole ensemble again. But thank you so much for joining me for this video, and thank you again to Skillshare for sponsoring this video. If you do want to get your free 1-month trial of Skillshare, you can click that link down in the description or use my code LadyRebeccaFashions. If you liked this video, please go ahead and click the thumbs up icon, and if you'd like to see more videos like this from me, please go ahead and click subscribe and the little bell icon to be notified every time I post a new video. I do post videos here on YouTube twice a week with my sewing vlogs like this out on Tuesdays and other costuming content out on Saturdays, but I post every day over on Instagram, so please go follow me on Instagram. That's at LadyRebeccaFashions. And if you'd like to help support all of the work that I do on this channel, I do have a link to my Patreon and my Ko-fi down in the description below. I'd also like to give a special shout out to my Edwardian level patrons, Sharon, Julie, and Mirage. Thank you all so much for joining me today. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you very soon in my next video. Happy sewing!